We all remember the distressing domestic violence storylines that we've seen in soaps over the years, whether it's Mandy Jordache getting her revenge on abusive husband Trevor in Brookside, Little Mo striking back at her Trevor in EastEnders, or even the current Corrie storyline following Yasmin's trial for retaliating against controlling Jeff. But what these all have in common is the victim taking back control, which sadly isn't always the case in real life. This tragic fact will be reflected in EastEnders next week, when viewers will see months of controlling and violent behaviour culminate in the death of Chantelle at the hands of her husband. If you didn't see it, here is a short clip from last night's episode where his coercive behaviour is plain to see.
Gray?
I'm not keeping it, don't worry. Just need to add an app. You'll love it. I've got one of mine.
I don't...
I've put little tags in Macamire's school bags too. See? They're exactly where they should be right now. It's cool.
Now, with Charity Refuge reporting a 54% rise during lockdown in women contacting its helpline, is it more important than ever for soaps to highlight domestic abuse? Now, obviously, it's a really unusual thing for a channel or a soap to release what's actually happening ahead of time. Normally, they like to build up to a dramatic climax. But the reason for this is obviously it is going to be so incredibly powerful and perhaps triggering for many, many women who we've been hearing through lockdown who are experiencing this. But I think it's vitally, vitally important that a storyline like this is played out, because I think all too often in movies, in TV shows, in dramas, they use the word brave when a woman finally stands up to a man and it all works out in the end, and that's not how it goes in real life. Actually, you are incredibly brave for looking after yourself, for looking after your children, whether that is because you're unable to leave, you have nowhere else to go. Bravery is not just about standing up to your abuser.
As well, often in the movies, for example, domestic abuse storylines, whether it's mental or physical abuse, is often tied up with a bow at the end.
Yes.
And the fact that I think that's probably why they've released it, because sadly, and I think at the moment it's up to 5 people a week, because it's increased so much in lockdown, are dying at the hands of an abusive partner. And that's not just females, that is males. I don't know what the statistics are as regards the gender gap, but not the gender gap, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think it's hugely important, and for people to know that there is help. We know that charities are struggling, but I think it's very, very important because as well, there's in our family. There was a police officer who's now an inspector, but when he was, and he used to say that so often with the police, their hands are tied because they turn up to a domestic abuse incident, often which has been reported by somebody outside of the home. And of course, the woman or whoever is being abused will not press charges, so that they're so frightened to press charges that they won't, or of course, they're being manipulated, as we know, as to people, you know, these people are very, very manipulative. And it's... sometimes the endings are tragic, which we're going to see. And it's important that it's being shown in a pre-watershed show as well.
I totally agree, totally agree. And also we need to change this... We need to change this image of that it's only a certain type of woman who experiences domestic abuse. Any woman can experience domestic abuse. Any woman. There is not a type.
Yeah, I just think, you know, I think it's really critical for a show like EastEnders to highlight what is happening, because as you said, in COVID period, there's been, you know, the death rate has gone up, and it's heartbreaking to think that there's a woman or a man at home and going through this situation, not feeling like they can have anybody to speak to. They're doing a great job by showing the other end and not just, you know, the joyous end of leaving and having the support. But I would say it's really important for people to still feel like they can speak out. You know, I've had a friend who was in a domestic violence relationship, and it was sometimes you are so convinced emotionally and stripped mentally that the fear of leaving is out of, you know, am I going to lose my children? I don't want to get anybody else involved or get them hurt. And between me and her, we made up like a code. So if she was in a situation where she felt really threatened, she'd maybe have a conversation
Like
with
a
me
safe word
and
or
say
something.
a safe word. And also, and that helped several times to get her out of situations. And another thing I advised her as well, same as being, you know, previous being a social worker, is have a safe place. Like, it makes me feel so emotional. Have a safe place that that person doesn't know of, a friend that he or she doesn't know that address. So if anything, you can get to that place. I think it's so important, it's critical for someone like EastEnders and ourselves to address it, because there's people right now in this situation and we want them to know that no matter what, you're not alone. There is places you can go to and you can speak to someone. That's why it's important that we talk about it in the day, in the evening, whenever. And if you are a friend and you know your friend is possibly going through something, as frustrating as it can be that you feel like they just never leave, please keep that space open and safe for them.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at Hollyoaks, we often tackle very difficult storylines, and as a person who was previously in an abusive relationship, I know the difficulties. But I think what EastEnders are doing in terms of highlighting this right now and the tragic loss of this woman, I think shows and highlights the fact that it doesn't always end well, and that the importance is get out and get help.
Yeah.
But I think we've got some helplines, haven't we, Andrea?
We've got helplines on our website if you've been affected by anything that we're talking about, or you're worried about someone you know. There's advice on there. But just very quickly, if you are someone who is experiencing this right now, or someone that you know is, to help a friend, create a safe space for them, as Judy said, make sure it's private. Tell them that you're worried about them. Try saying you haven't seen yourself lately. Is there anything you want to talk about? Open that door and let them know that you're open to having that conversation. Take them seriously, listen to them and believe them, and assure them that it is not their fault. After the break, we will be catching up with Martin Clunes. We'll see you after this.